Welcome to Diamond Valley Writers Guild's March meeting. It's so good to see all these faces, both on Zoom and in the room. We have a great program for you today. I think you'll get a lot out of it. First off, I do want to remind our Zoom participants to mute your mics so that you don't accidentally barge into the middle of the presentation and we get to see you on camera when we don't want to see you on camera. A little bit of an anthology update. The editing is in progress. The cover we're working on now. There is a wait list, but it's going to close really, really soon. So if you have something you're working on that involves animals, if you want specifics, go to the website and you can find all the information. But it is going to be closing very soon at this point. And the anthology committee voted on a title. It's been approved by the board of directors, and it's going to be called Menagerie, a compilation of short stories, poems, and musings. So it should be kind of a fun, quirky, very eclectic. We have everything from grimdark to cute little memoir pieces to stories where the main character is an animal. So there's a lot of diversity. We have poems and everything from 1,800 word short stories down to, haiku. So it's a very diverse anthology. Thank you. Shout outs. Is Lynette on yet?
Yeah.
Oh, hi, Lynette. There you are. She's
hey,
up in Montana. You're muted, I think. Are you? No. Okay. Go ahead.
Not.
Talk about shout outs.
Can you guys hear me? Can somebody give me a thumbs up? Okay, great. Hey, shout outs, you guys. Get them in by the 5th of the month, which means now. And also make sure you send me a cover picture, a purchase link, and a short blurb. If you are doing celebrations, or maybe you have a book signing or something exciting, we'll do like a 1 or 2 line sentence. And then if you have more information, maybe you took pictures or you won an award and you want to share more, send me the link. And what I'll do is I'll say see more and put the link on there so that people can follow you, maybe go out to your website or just find out more about your celebration. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Lynette. She does a great job with that, getting those out every month. And again, if you get it in the next couple of days, she will be able to get you into the March shout out. And that is for anything you published in the month of March, any events that you're speaking at, any blogs, if you won an award recently and you want everyone to know about it. So that's what the shout out is about. It's a member benefit. Website, Kevin, member profiles. He's up in Canada.
Yeah, a little cool up here this morning. The website, I've done a few little updates to it. I've started doing, I don't know if you guys noticed, the promo graphics on the social media sites like Facebook, X, and soon to be the YouTube things. I've actually got an agreement now with a company called BookBrush, which I'm trying to get them to present. It's all about social media, or doing graphics and promotions via social media, which I think would be beneficial to a lot of people. So I've actually got an official okay to start doing that. And so hopefully we're going to have better graphics for the YouTube videos and all that kind of stuff. On the website, I'm fighting with Wix again. They changed their member profile book system again. So I'm working with them to try and fix it. I've been on the chat with them all morning and somebody's going to get back to me. So hopefully that's going to be soon. But please, if you are an author and have books on our website, make sure you go into the top right part of the website, of every page of the website where it says login. Make sure you have a member, make sure you have an account, first of all, and your membership will be updated onto your account. And then you can actually create a profile that has all of your social media links, your Facebook, Twitter, your personal website link, Patreon for those of you doing, paper creation stuff, and as well as your own little bio profile. And then what happens is I'm working on, hopefully when Wix gets to me, I can link your books directly into your profile page, and then you can actually edit the descriptions, links, all that kind of stuff for your own books. So that's pretty much all that's happening with the website right now. The only other thing I've added is at the bottom of every page, no matter where you're on the website, you can now share the page to social media sites. So hopefully that'll help to draw a little more traffic towards the Diamond Valley website. That's about
Excellent.
it.
And Am I correct? Pat, could you please mute? Hap, could you please mute? I believe anyone can create a profile as long as you're a member, whether you have a book on the website or not. Is that correct, Kevin?
No, actually, anybody can create a profile, because even if you make a comment on another post or anything like that, like you can actually make comments on our meeting posts, your profile does get linked, but only if you're a member. If you're not a member, you can still create a profile, it just will never get linked or shown. It'll never be publicly available.
And where can they find the instructions on how to claim and do their profile?
Oh yes, and I'm currently redoing this. I'm trying to create little videos for it. But currently on the very right-hand side of the menu, there is a support section, and underneath there is a FAQs and how-tos section. And I've got all kinds of stuff in there about how to submit your shout-outs, how to create a member profile page, how to add your books to the page, although that one's changing, and a couple of other things that you can actually just follow the instructions or print them off so you can actually follow along on a printed copy. But yeah, it's all into the support section.
Excellent. Thank you. He does a great job. Can I get a round of applause for both Lynette and Kevin? We could not do what we do without all of our volunteers, and they are just so amazing to work with. I can't even say enough positive things about them. Cafe Press, Kevin again.
Oh yes, under the support section, there is a purchase merchandise, which actually goes out to a Cafe Press website, which does promotional products such as the shirts, coffee cups. They've got phone cases, they've got mouse pads, they've got aprons, they've got toddler clothes, women's clothes, men's clothes, hoodies. I don't think there's jackets. There's bags. There is, I think, almost 350 different products that they have there. And I've got a lot of them actually now tailored with the Diamond Valley logoing and all that kind of stuff. So.
Yep, golf balls. Did you hear that?
Oh yeah, golf balls. There's golf balls.
Thank you. Also, Kevin, being our webmaster, is the one who set all that up. He's just done a huge amount of work for the Guild. Member renewal benefits and reminders. Here's Jessica.
Good morning, everyone. Bear with me while I turn this so everyone can hear me better. Alrighty, so it is getting towards the end of renewal season, which is my favorite time of year because I get to work a lot, making sure that all of your checks and deposits get put in on time. So that being said, come April 1st, which is a little over 2 weeks away, is going to be our cutoff for you to be able to renew if you have books on the website. After April 1st, we will start taking down books of non-members, because that is a benefit. If you are a member, you get to keep your books on the website, you get to promote your books, promote anything that you are putting out into the world through our mailing list, and you get to use our website as another platform. But if you are not a paid member, we have to take off your books to make room for people that are paid members. So if you have books on the website and you're going, oh, I'm not sure if I've renewed or not, I will be in the back. You can come talk to me, either myself or Michelle, and we will check if you are a member, and if you are not, we'll get you right there renewed. You can renew through check, cash, sending to P.O. Box 1154, Hemet, California, or you can go onto the PayPal. We have links on the website, as well as you can just send it to dvwritersguild@gmail.com through PayPal and pay your dues that way. All right? So remember, come April 1st, we will be starting to take down all of the members' books that are no longer members. So please get your renewals in. Thank you.
How much does it cost to renew?
Thank you for asking that. It costs $25 a year. Just a year. We're not doing a monthly. We're not trying to break your bank. We're just trying to support the Guild and make sure that you can still have this community. So it is $25 a year. And you can renew again, cash, check, bail bonds, anything like that. So just make sure that you send everything in. Thank you.
What if you're a student?
That's a great question. I'm trying to make it quick. We're slow today. So, if you're a student, it is $15 for college and $10 for high school. So we're trying to get some more younger people in. So if you have any children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, weird kid down the block, come tell them that we want them in the guild. And so we have lower rates for students of college and high school. Is there anything else I'm forgetting? Wonderful. So you can come see me in the back and I'll give you the full details. Thank you.
Can I have a round of applause for our treasurer, Jessica? She does do a good job. And I'll tell you, it includes having to file tax returns because we're a 501c3 corporation, nonprofit. And so it's that time of year for her as well. So it is a big job. It's not a small job to do this. So I appreciate it. A couple other things on member benefits. Most everything we do is free. Coming to the meetings, looking at the YouTube channel, getting involved. You don't have to pay to be a member, but to be in the anthology, to be able to have shout outs like she was saying, to run for office, those sorts of things, you must be a paid member. So we kind of have a dividing line. We don't want to exclude anybody just because they don't have the $25, but we really, really appreciate if anyone out there is interested and is not a member, please join. We appreciate your donations to the organization. Volunteers for hybrid team and board positions. So first off, on the hybrid team, I do want to give them a round of applause too, because they work very hard. Please, they're here at 8 a.m. to set up. We have Aiden in the back, Sophia, Liam, Jessica, and Angie. And they're here, 8 o'clock. If anyone else wants to come join us at 8 o'clock, it's fun. Just come on down. It is so much fun, and we'd love to have you. Board positions. So as much as all of us enjoy volunteering our time who are on the board, there is a little bylaw section that says you can only be on the board for 6 years. I am terming out in October. So the office of president will be open. That is non-negotiable. At this point, our vice president who lives in Canada is ineligible for running because he's in Canada. You have to be able to be local, to sign checks, to be a legal representative. You have to at least live in the United States. So the point is that position will be open. I'll be reminding you periodically. If you have an interest and want to know, hey, what's that entail? Give me a call or email, and I'll be happy to talk to you about it. Let's see. Announcements and member successes. Let's go with member successes first. Has anyone had a book published since the last meeting? Or a blog? Or any sort of celebration? Anybody on Zoom? Nobody? I see a hand. There's John. Okay, John, unmute.
Yeah, I always got something going on.
That's true.
Monday, St. Patrick's Day, in light of my Irish heritage, I'm releasing my next book, and it's Military School Foundation for Success, and it's a second in a series of self-help books, and it basically it's my little story on how I went to military school and how it kind of had influencing factors on me, getting to where I got in life. So that comes out on Monday.
Excellent. Well, congratulations on that. This man is prolific. It seems like every month he has a new book coming out. I've only met a few people that have that sort of output. So congratulations on that. Anyone else in the room have something they want to announce? You're first time attendee, Bill. Why don't you go to the mic there, right behind you, and tell them about your book? Bill Veely is a long-term Hemet resident, and 82 years he's lived in town, and he has a book he wants to share about. No. He's going to the mic right now. No.
Oh, I see it. Thank you. This is my first trip here. I've lived in the valley. I was born here, so I've been here all my life. And I've been playing golf all my life. So I wrote a book about golf instruction. And probably nobody in here would be interested in it because it's an instructional book about golf. But if you're into golf, it might be interested. So appreciate your time.
Thank you. Congratulations on that.
I've been a realtor alongside of Michelle for 50 years.
A long time. No, It's not been 50. It's only been 40. Don't make me older than I am. But yes. We used to have desks that were very close to each other when I first started. When I was 10. I was 10 40 years ago. Right.
Hey, Michelle.
Yes.
That gentleman he put his contact information in the chat room and his email. We have something in common.
See? Excellent. Good. Well, that's what this is about.
I actually wrote part 2 to this, and it's I'm just lining up the photographer. Once I get those photos, it'll be published.
Yeah, he'll have that out in 3 or 4 days, knowing John. Oh, look there's Karen. What do you got, Karen?
Well, of course, I'm publishing regularly on Substack, and I still love that. I just finished yesterday, finally, editing my 3rd in a series of books. And I wanted to bring to the club this idea. I've had a couple of speaking engagements with friends of the library, one in Sun City and one in Murrieta. They love to hear from authors. And that, even though you don't get paid for those speaking engagements, it's a good place to sell your books because you know those people are interested in books. So that has been good. And then on March 27th, this is kind of off, but I'm going to be doing comedy at Pachanga at the Women's Health Expo. And I'm really excited about that. If any of you women haven't been there before, it's an all-day thing with a luncheon and doctors speaking and booths. And it's a wonderful event, but you have to register online for the Women's Health Expo. Thank you.
Good to know.
I got a question for her.
Wait, hold on, John. For those of you who have not heard Karen before, she's a really funny stand-up comic. So you get a chance, it's worth catching one of her shows. Go ahead, John.
Hey, Karen, John here. You wrote the children's book a couple years ago, right?
A children's book?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I bought it. I've been carrying it around, looking to try to connect with you to get your autograph.
Ah, okay.
Well, show up in the room at next month's meeting, both of you, and you can hook up for autographs. How's that? Okay, any other celebrations? I see somebody. Can you go over here to the mic in the center of the room? Oh, okay, and hold on Zoom.
Way too high for me.
There you go.
Hi, this is my first time attending live, and last month was my first time attending via Zoom, so I'm new to the group and new to the area, about 3 years. And my name is Catherine Hemingway, and I have published 2 books based on Jane Austen characters from all of her novels. And I was a presenter last week to the Jane Austen Society chapter of San Diego at the library. And anyway, I just wanted to introduce myself and let you know that I have not managed to get my books posted online. I'm not sure why that's not working because I'm a member. And
you're talking to the right person. Kevin's online, and
yeah,
I'm sure he'll be
I think
right on
we've
it.
exchanged emails even about this, but I still don't have anything online, but I am a new member and just wanted to let you know about my recent presentation to that organization.
Thank you for letting us know. If you email it in, we'll put it on the celebrations for this month saying that you spoke there. Okay? Yeah. Excellent. And, yes, Pamela, go ahead.
Kevin says that even though I'm not a member, I can talk about my book. It's called The Horse Who Wanted to Fly. And I had my first book signing at Barnes & Noble, the local Barnes & Noble, on March 1st. And I signed 23 books and they had ordered 25. So there's 2 books left at Barnes & Noble. And it's currently on display next to The Pigeon, Will the Pigeon Graduate, and David Shannon's new book. So it's like, yay, I'm like with the big timers as far as children's books go.
Excellent.
And
congratulations.
Thank you very much.
So you need to join so we can put it up on our website.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, who else on Zoom? There you go. Go ahead, Kathleen.
I just got an email yesterday. I belong to Alignable, which is a networking group, international and national. And I've been voted Sholo's Local Business Person of 2025.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And her business is writing and speaking and stuff. So that's pretty good. Excellent.
Yeah, I interview people. That's why one of the reasons I'm part of Alignable. I want to meet more authors, publishers, things like that. And it's an excellent way of meeting them and exploring what they do, and then finding somebody they can both fulfill the needs of the other.
Excellent. Yeah, she's
Business-wise.
interviewing me on the 29th, so I'm looking forward to that interview. Okay, any more successes? Okay, a couple of quick announcements then. First off, we are now, some of you may know, a member of the Hemet-Senseno Valley Chamber of Commerce as a nonprofit organization. So this coming mixer, which is on, I believe it's the 26th of March, it'll be up at Ramona Bowl, and we are the spotlighted business. Granted, we're not a business. So I'll be up there telling whoever's at that mixer, usually they get 100, 200 people, about our organization. If any of you locally want to attend and be my support, I would love to have other people there. It's 5:30 at Ramona Bowl, probably because they're going to be kicking off the pageant as well. But we get 5 minutes to talk about our organization. That's kind of exciting. A couple of other things. We've got tomorrow is Temecula Valley Writers and Illustrators down at City Hall. One of our members, who happens to also be my husband, is their speaker. He's speaking on podcasting for writers. And his book was just released this month too. He couldn't come today. But his book was released called Rise Above the Noise, A Beginner's Guide to Podcasting. He was really excited because his ebook, his, the paperback and the hardcover have all come out, and they were number 1, 2, and 5. They've not left the top 5 positions since they were published 2 weeks ago, which is kind of cool for him. And the audiobook just came out, I think like yesterday. So go look for it. You can either go and look at Bing Bruce or whatever. His book is also up on our website. Last announcement, the California Writers Club, their meeting is next Saturday in Ontario. You can find their information on, I think, our website too. If not, we're partnered with them, so we'll put them up there too. Any other announcements that we have? By the way, I want to shout out to Kathleen on that. Kathleen helped Bing get his book up on Amazon. So thank you, Kathleen. Anything else? Any announcements? Nope. Okay, here is the writing tip. Jessica.
I thought I'd give numbers a break and actually move to words for once. So today I am talking about paragraphs. I've done a lot of reading and I don't do as much writing as I'd like. But one thing that I see a lot in writing and that I struggle with is paragraphs and when to break them. And I saw this tip online and it has lived with me forever. And it has incredibly improved my writing from here on out and when to actually break paragraphs. So it's easy. You just remember tip top. So make a paragraph every time that any of these change. The time, T-I, the place, P, the topic, T-O, and the person, P. So time, place, topic, person. If any of those change, that is when you need to make a paragraph break. And it has helped exponentially. And it's on this cute little photo. So if you want it, we can send it off. But I see lots of pens writing, which is good. That means it's a good tip. So just remember tip top. It's a little confusing at times because sometimes I'm like, well, what does the I stand for? Because I remember it's 4 things and everything, but it's time and topic. So, all right, that's my tip. It's short and sweet today. Just to remember tip top. Thank you.
Short and sweet is good because we're going to move on now to our featured speaker. Get my bio up here. Thank you for coming, Ash. I know it's a long drive. He came all the way up from San Diego this morning. Ash Bishop is a lifetime reader who loves all genres, especially science fiction, mystery, and fantasy. His first novel, Intergalactic Exterminators, Inc., won the prestigious Audie Award for the Best Audiobook of 2023 in the category of science fiction. I have to make an aside here. I downloaded it this week. I am 3/4 of the way through, and I'm really enjoying the audiobook. Let's see. Where's the next thing? I shouldn't have stopped. Sorry about that. His second novel, The Horoscope Writer, won an Independent Publisher Award, IPPY, earned a nomination for a Foreword INDIES Award for Best Mystery Novel, and is published internationally in multiple languages. Ash holds an MFA in creative writing from SDSU and taught high school English. He's also worked in the video game industry in educational app development, and during the film production of the movie Jackie Brown, he had the auspicious privilege of fetching coffee for Quentin Tarantino. Currently, Ash works in veteran services, assisting members of the military transition into civilian workforce. But his best days are spent at home in Southern California with his wife and 2 wonderful children. Please welcome Ash Bishop.
All right. Height issue, yeah. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming out. I appreciate you being here. Hopefully I'm important enough to give you some information. I thought we'd be sitting around a table. I don't like this, me at the top, you guys at the table dynamic, but we'll make it work. So I'm sorry I was a little bit late. Usually only editors have to wait for authors, but you guys got to join a rarefied group today. Drive took me a little longer than I expected, but I'll give you a little bit of background of my experience becoming a writer, and then I'll talk about the topic I wanted to talk about, which is antagonists and a sort of correlating topic of conflicts. Before I forget, that tip with the paragraphs is a really nice one. I never thought of it that way. I grew up watching films. I was born in '74, so I was right during the heyday of the 1980s era of television, of movies. VHS arrives and we all spend our afternoons watching movies. And so when I think of paragraph breaks, I think of camera cuts. When is the camera going to cut in a show or a movie? That's generally sort of the sense of when the paragraph breaks too. It's kind of a way of giving the reader a break almost. A visual break on camera, a sort of neurological break on the page. So anyway, I'll tell you about my background. So I got my MFA, graduated in 2001, started writing then. This was in the era of going to bookstores and buying, publisher, how to find an agent books, and then mailing them, right? It's funny that all that stuff has changed, bookstores, mail, everything over the course, but I still have all my old rejection letters. In fact, my eventual agent rejected me 3 times before she accepted me, and sometimes I still send her pictures of the rejections just for fun. So I've been doing it a long time, and part of what held me up, believe it or not, was this kind of like fear disguised as artistic integrity. Basically, I was afraid to network. That's the best way to put it. I was afraid to get help. I kept thinking that if I was good enough, then the natural sort of quality would just rise to the top and I would succeed, and that would be all there is to it. And I'm still not advertising on social media for the most part, and it's probably killing me because I'm still thinking I don't want to be out there. I'm still scared. That's the real thing. But I'm thinking artistically, I don't want to be out there hawking my wares like a used car salesman. People should come to me if they like the stuff that I'm doing, and if they don't, then they shouldn't come to me. It should be that simple. It's really not. And I mention that story only to sort of inspire you to keep swinging away at whatever approach you're taking, but also to take people's advice, and also to take care of each other, to network. The way that I eventually broke through My wife works at a hospital, and another social work friend of hers was saying, "Oh, your husband's a writer. I know I'm good friends with a writer. His name's Jesse Kellerman." And my wife came home and she goes, "Oh, my friend's friends with Jesse Kellerman. Do you know who he is?" And I was like, "Man, Kellerman, that name sounds familiar." And we were actually on our way up to Santa Barbara to visit her parents, my wife's parents, and so we stopped at a bookstore just for fun because it's nice to be around books. And we went into the mystery section and we looked at Kellerman, and the entire wall was Jonathan Kellerman, Faye Kellerman, and Jesse Kellerman, and that's a husband, a wife, and their son. And I was like, "Huh, I think I should meet this guy. This is looking pretty good." So against my fears and my integrity, I guess, because I didn't want to ask him for help, I went to meet him. And thank goodness he ended up being such a genuine, such a nice guy that it sort of took away my fears of networking. And I felt like a true friendship with him. And we started playing poker regularly. He started taking my money. He was so much better than me. So sort of analytical to my dreamy, well, maybe these two jacks will work. We just became true friends, and he started reaching out to his agents saying, "Hey, this is my friend. This is his book. I want you to take a look at it." And his agent read it, and she said, "It's not for me, but I have a co-agent who handles this genre more. Why don't I try her? Why don't I pass it on to her?" She read it, and she loved it. And she's essentially facilitated all of my success. So if you can see that sort of transition, right, that line, it went from what turned out to be a real friendship to a professional reference to another professional reference to success. And that was after probably 15 years of just blindly sending out emails and snail mail letters to agents, asking them to look at my work. That's a simplified version. I had found an agent before that, but she wasn't able to sell my book. Anyway, ultimately, it was my ability to ask a friend for help, my ability to sort of humble myself to get the help that I needed to get the success that I eventually had. So I'll tell you how it worked. I grew up reading mystery novels, and essentially any author with Mick in their name. John D. MacDonald's my favorite. I really like Gregory MacDonald, like Ed McBain. Read a lot of Robert B. I'm just going to make this up. Mick Parker. So I read all those guys growing up, and I was thinking, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to write. And I wrote that book, The Horoscope Writer, in 2015. And that's the one that I actually found my own agent for, but she wasn't able to sell it. But the feedback was really good from the publishers. They just kept saying the market wasn't hot. And I was thinking, the mystery market's not hot? With all of these books selling by men with like Lee McChild and all the rest, right? And it didn't make sense to me. But what I decided to do was, for the first time in my career, I'm going to chase the market a little bit. If the market's not hot for mystery, the market at the time was hot for young adult science fiction, like The Hunger Games. And I thought, well, I'll chase the market a little bit. So I wrote a science fiction novel, a young adult science fiction novel. Well, the problem is when you chase the market, it's always moved by the time you get to it, right? The book doesn't just generate immediately. You've got to write it, unless you're using AI. Please don't. So by the time you've written it, the market's so glutted that what are you going to do now? The publishers have bought so many of these kind of books that they don't want anymore. And that's exactly what happened to my young adult sci-fi. And so my agent said, "Hey, why don't you write an adult science fiction?" And I was like, "Okay, I'm a mystery writer, but why not? Let's give it a try." So I wrote Intergalactic Exterminators Incorporated there, and it was purchased, it was published, and it was a pretty big hit. As was mentioned, it won the Audie Award for Best Novel of 2023, Best Audiobook Novel of 2023. And the Audies are essentially like the Oscars, I guess you would call it, of audiobooks. Less people care about them than care about the Oscars, but it is basically the pinnacle of the profession for that. They invited me out to New York for the presentation show and all that stuff. So that was great. And now Audible will put the book on its cover page under award winners frequently, and it just keeps selling. Like that alone is enough to just keep it selling. You can track the sales or the sales rank on Amazon. And so I watch that book just sort of pin up at the top because of that award. So that's really nice. My publisher, around the time when I had published that, said, "We're looking for another mystery writer. Does anyone know any?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I know a guy. Me." So I sent him that. So I have this weird distinction of being an award-winning science fiction author and a mystery author with only 2 books. That is an unusual sort of path for writing. Now, I'll tell you about the horoscope book real quick. This is a weird thing. Remember, I had all these artistic and all this artistic integrity and these thoughts that the cream would rise to the crop and all that, or the cream would rise to the top. That book has horoscope in the name, and I'm pretty sure that alone created this enormous demand for it. When it was published on Goodreads as a book to read for the summer or whatever, 30,000 people clicked it as want to read. And you can see the stats when you click on it, like how many people want to read this. And I was like, 30,000? That seems like a pretty big number. So I went to Stephen King's It, I want to say, and I checked that, and he had 30,000 people wanting to read that. And I was like, ha, Stephen, I got you. Now, of course, he's been out for 30 years, and, millions of people have read it already. So it's not quite a apples to apples comparison, but it was still really exciting. What happened was, though, my publisher made a really interesting decision. They sold the book as a free book to BookBub, essentially. They said, basically, you can give it away for free for 3 days. So 5 months later, BookBub sets it for free, and it gets downloaded by like 40,000 people. It goes to #1 on all of Amazon, every chart, the #1 best-selling book. And I say selling sort of awkwardly because it was free, but it just shot up there and stayed there. It pinned there for the 3 days it was free, which was terrific to me. It was exciting. I went to the Librarian Association, what's it called? Librarian Convention at the San Diego Convention Center, and they were giving away the book there as well because it was a librarian thing, so you couldn't sell it. I just did all this to give away books. And all these people lined up, this long line, and they were saying they'd read it, and people were taking pictures of me, and I was going, what is happening? This is so interesting. I felt like I'd hit some new level. The only thing missing is people haven't paid for it yet. But that was pretty fun too. So I've got this book that I published, sci-fi, in 2022, a book that I wrote in 2015 and published in 2023, and now the sequel to Intergalactic is coming out in December of this year, and that'll be really fun to see what happens with that. So anyway, this is kind of the way my career has gone. You heard Michelle say that I work in Veterans Services. I do not make enough money to just write. If I did, the books would be coming way, way faster. But I spend the days helping veterans, and then the nights after I put my family to sleep, writing away at my keyboard when I have the energy to do it. So anyway, I love writing. I've been thinking about antagonists a lot because basically we have this interesting situation happening where we are becoming more and more open-minded as a society. We're sort of becoming more open-minded and closed-minded at the same time. It's a weird thing, as if we can't shake off our ability to only think in simple terms. So we're becoming sort of open-minded, but also not. I don't know how else to explain it, but I can point it out how the effect it has on art. Art is always going to try to capture the zeitgeist of the society that it's representing, that's producing it. And so art will be a way for us to express and understand and come to terms with the things that are happening all around us. Like I said, I was born in 74, so I was probably, what's the math? 20-something when 9/11 happened, and I remember waking up to the World Trade Center towers falling, and my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, saying, this is real, this is serious, I can't believe this is happening. I was teaching at Grossmont College at the time, and they canceled classes. It was this huge deal, and it took us a long time to process it. And how did we process it? Well, Godzilla came back, right? He really did. About 2 years later, the Godzilla movies started coming out. And then when the Avengers needed to defend something, what were they defending? New York, of course, from all of the invaders that were coming to destroy the buildings. We process those events, those things, by watching them play out in our fantasies. And it helps us sort of think about them without confronting them directly. And so you can kind of track these cultural zeitgeists by tracking the art that it produces, right? Well, when we're doing that, writers, we can kind of be at the forefront of things just by writing about the world that's around us as we see it, because that's what people want to read about, because they want to process what they're experiencing. And the world has never been more dramatic than it is now, right? We have a lot of stuff to process, a lot of changes, a lot of conflicts, a lot of differences. And so the world is sort of set up really well for artists right now. They need us. And so how do we do it? Well, that brings me back to the open-minded thing. I watched Top Gun, the most recent one, and I was like, this is so interesting, because I don't know if you guys saw Top Gun, but they never suggested who the bad guy was. He just wasn't there. He was somebody. He had a base somewhere in the snow, but he had no identity. He had no culture. He had no ideology. He was just like sort of a faceless bad guy. And the reason they did this was for what I'm talking about. It's hard now to make villains because we're so open-minded as a culture that when we look at it, we're like, well, those villains have moms and dads too, right? They have people that love them, and they have a thing that they really care about that they're fighting for. And I don't want to get in the way of that, right? I want us all to succeed. That's the sort of way we think now as a society, kind of. We're also like really petty and terrible. And so we have trouble like knowing how to villainize something. And if you read my book that came out in 2015, I've got just a regular old villain. He's just a I'll stop you and kill you. And he's just this regular old villain. Well, when I was writing in 2022, I was like, well, that's not going to work anymore. Like, we need some complexity to these villains, or we need something. We need something to make them seem bad without us seeming sort of overly nationalistic and enforcing our will and so on and so forth. This used to not be a problem for authors, right? When Robinson Crusoe is grabbing Friday, his manservant, and naming him Friday because he found him on a Friday, no one's going, hey, what about Friday's rights? What about Friday's real name? What about, Friday's culture? No one was thinking about that for Robinson Crusoe. But we, modern authors, part of the zeitgeist, we've got to think about that. So who's your villain? Top Gun decided, I'm not going to make one. I'm just going to have this sort of idea of a villain out there, right? And part of what they were doing was appealing to the Chinese market, because there's so many movie theaters in China now that they just didn't want to upset China by attacking, what would have been the obvious answer, Russia. And so they just sort of said, well, the villain is, fill in the blank. They were doing something a little different than what I was doing. But I had thought to myself, who's my enemy for Intergalactic Exterminators? Who's the bad guy? Is it Elon Musk? Maybe that would work these days, right? Is it these faceless masses of foreigners, right? That's what that was the enemy in the second Indiana Jones movie, which I loved at the time, but I didn't realize it was a representation of sort of Reagan's fears. Who's my enemy? Well, I went for the obvious. Insects, right? My guys are exterminators. We have not reached the level of open-mindedness that insects that we care about insects, right? No one's like, well, these insects have moms and dads. No, they don't. They're swarming us. They're terrible. Let's get rid of them. That was a pretty easy. That was almost a cop-out. Insect enemies, right? But we still have to sort of approach that question. I'm going to say something, I guess, a little controversial. Well, let me say this. I brought a section to read from The Great Gatsby if we have time. I don't know if we're going to have time. But I wanted to talk about a quote F. Scott Fitzgerald had. He said, the sign of a first-rate intellect is the ability to hold two opposing ideas in your head at once and still function. And I think that's a really nice quote because it does represent sort of the world that we're in right now, where we're trying to see everybody's side. We're trying to sort of figure out, what everyone's feeling and what everyone's thinking and where everyone's coming from and still function and still sort of move forward in a straight line. If I may be controversial for a moment, the topic of abortion is such an interesting one. You want to talk about conflict? You want to talk about antagonists? Abortion is so interesting, right? Because you've got a value system that says, do not murder, and you've got a value system that says women's rights and the right to their own body are really important. Now, anyone that says that's an easy question when you have those two things is being overly simplistic, right? Because those two things are really valuable to our society. They're incredibly valuable. And so that question can't be resolved ever because you've got these two different really good values going head to head with each other. And whenever anyone asks me where I stand on that issue, I'm like, I don't know. That's crazy. You want me to decide between women's rights and unborn babies, or fetuses? I don't even know what language to use. It's such a crazy topic. That is a conflict. All right? That's a conflict because you've got two ideas. Now, you want to find your antagonist? Your antagonist should be representing something not simple, not evil, not silly, but something with real cultural value, right? Because that's going to be powerful. That's going to give him the energy that he needs to move forward. So my antagonist strongly believes in his own ideology, and he cares about it, and he's a nice person. He's decent. He's good. He's good. But what's the problem? He stands between me, who am also my protagonist, who is also a decent person, also a good person, and simply have by unfortunate coincidence, alternate conflicting ideology, right? Anybody a fan of Les Miserables? Oh, it's so good. It's so good. I've seen it twice and could sing every song if it weren't not masculine to do so. So there's two characters in Les Miserables, Jean Valjean and Javert, right? Javert believes in the law. He had such a tough upbringing, and the law saved him, and now he's a police officer, and he knows that if we all follow the law, we're going to be in a better place than if we all don't. That's a pretty true ideology, right? It kind of makes sense. As a society, we need laws, we need people to enforce them. That's Javert. Valjean found that the system was bad enough that his family was starving, and so he had to steal food to keep his family alive. He stole the food, broke the law. Now, which one of those guys has a faulty ideology? Neither one, right? Neither one. And that's what makes it so incredibly compelling when they face off. Because you're thinking, well, man, I want Valjean to win. I am on his side. He was trying to keep his family alive. That ultimately is the decision every single one of us would make, right? But at the same time, can we look at Javert and say, hey, stop following the law, policeman? No, we can't really tell him to do that either. So it creates this really compelling, energetic forward momentum for the story. You're on both sides. If you guys saw The Fugitive, they recreated those characters with Harrison Ford and Tommy Lee Jones. And about halfway through, you're like, I'm kind of cheering for Tommy Lee Jones here, even though he's the bad guy, right? Probably the best example of a complex character like this is the one that actually starts out bad and then becomes more sympathetic over the course of the story. Have you guys read Game of Thrones, a little novel, silly little novel some of you may have heard of? Did anyone know how Game of Thrones starts? The very first chapter? Oh, shoot, second chapter. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Second chapter. Is that? No, you might be right, because they're traveling to behead the deserter.
Sorry to be undermining your presentation.
No, I should have done my research. It might be the third chapter. Somewhere in the beginning of Game of Thrones, a young boy is climbing around in a castle, right? And he loves to climb, and he gets to this top window, and he looks through the window, and I'm going to be a little controversial again, or at least crass. There's two people having sex inside the room, and it turns out that they're brother and sister, right? And having been discovered that way, they can't let the boy live, and so the man, Jaime Lannister, throws the boy off the wall to his death down below. He doesn't die, he's crippled, but then Jaime has to try and kill him again. Turns out Jaime Lannister, now remember, he's committing incest, and he's just tried twice to murder an innocent boy. Those are two values we cannot not care about, right? Incest is wrong in every culture, like almost every culture throughout all of time. It's universally frowned upon. And yet, Jaime ends up being one of your favorite characters by the end of the book. And it's like, how is that possible? How did George R.R. Martin do that, right? He challenged himself. He said, I'm going to make the worst character you can imagine, and then I'm going to make him your favorite. And he does it. And it's amazing, right? And so you have this antagonist. I don't want to spoil how he pulls it off, but please read him if you haven't. I'm not going to, he challenged himself. He takes this antagonist and makes him unbelievably irredeemable. And then he starts moving pieces around to make you care about him, and then to make you love him, and then make you cheer for him. And that is an amazing journey to take as a reader, to not have the simplicity of evil villain cackling somewhere trying to get the weather controlling machine to take over the world for no reason, but rather real person, bad person, slowly becoming good person while keeping his day job as antagonist, right? That is a terrific and powerful combination. All right. So let's talk about conflict for a minute. Conflict is going to determine who your antagonist is. So if you want to make a compelling antagonist, the first thing you have to do is decide sort of what my enemy or what my conflict is going to be. Now, in order to determine conflict, we also sort of have to keep this idea rolling of what my protagonist wants, right? So almost every story begins with the protagonist wanting something. They want to accomplish something. My daughter just watched Wicked, and I asked her about it, and she said, I didn't think they spent enough time developing the characters. And I go, well, I haven't seen it. I did pitch my book once to the publisher who owned Wicked. Wicked, interestingly, who's the hero there, right? The Wicked Witch, right? We're doing the Jaime Lannister thing. We're taking the enemy, the traditional enemy, and we're saying, let's look at it more closely and sort of understand their motivations and the things that made them who they are, right? And then we'll end up caring about them. And we'll end up cheering for them. So anyway, she's watching Wicked, and she's thinking, she says, not enough characterization. And I said, well, Annika, usually in musicals, the characterization happens in the songs, right? And it's kind of a fun trick if you really want to remind yourself of how to build a protagonist and their want. Watch a Disney movie, right? Watch Ariel. What's the first song she sings? It might not be first. That's why I'm saying it. Part of your world. And what's she establishing? That's right. She's fallen in love with a human. She wants to be with him. And that energy is going to carry the story completely forward. And the protagonists want, right? So we have to figure out who our protagonist is, what they want. That's stage one, right? Now, the second thing is we have to figure out what kind of conflict the protagonist is in. What kind of enemy he's facing, right? And I'm sure you guys have probably heard them, but there's 7 core conflicts that folks have identified, right? Person versus person. This is you versus your boss at work. Person versus God, right? This is you versus fate and God and the things that are happening to you, right? Person versus society. This is my favorite one by far. I love Catcher in the Rye. I love One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I love Henry David Thoreau. You know the famous story when Emerson, who wrote Self-Reliance, would not leave prison. He had been imprisoned for taxes. He wasn't going to pay taxes to a society that was using the taxes to enforce slavery, right? We're a while back here, 1840. He wasn't going to pay taxes, and so he gets thrown in prison. And let's see. I think Emerson's in prison, and I think Thoreau comes to visit him, and he says, no, it's the other way around. Thoreau's in prison, Emerson comes to visit him, and he says, David, what are you doing in there? And Thoreau looks back at Emerson, and he says, what are you doing out there? Right? In other words, if the society is insane, the hero must fight all of it, right? And that's, Mark Twain writes that in the same plot in Huckleberry Finn, right? If a society believes in slavery, we cannot support it. And therefore, we must fight against it. Now, the problem with the man versus society or person versus society model is, how do you win, right? I mean, what happens to those people always? They either conform or they die, right? They burn themselves out fighting to try and stop society. But it's always a fascinating story. Does anyone know how Huck Finn ends? Any classicists out there? Classicists? No?
Anybody on chat or on Zoom know how it ends?
You guys are welcome to join in. What were you saying? He doesn't actually.
Okay,
Yeah.
unless you go to the mic, they can't hear you on Zoom.
What Huck ends up doing is he joins the Native Americans in the West. He says, I'm going to go find a wilderness somewhere and I'm going to live out there. And the idea is quite simply what I'm saying. He can't change society. He can't defeat it. He can't stop slavery on his own. And so what he's going to do is leave society. So your conflict is going to create your antagonist. And when it's man versus society, your antagonist is everybody. Everybody that Huck Finn runs into over the course of his journey down that river is trying to stop him from his goal, which is to travel with Jim, this slave, and help Jim find freedom, right? So every single person is an antagonist in man versus society. And that's wonderful because it's so rife with tension, right? Man versus nature. It's an interesting one. This is Moby Dick. This is plane crashes in the forest and you have to eat each other, right? This is the sort of power of nature. I had man versus distance today trying to get here on time. Sometimes it just doesn't, sometimes you're facing, this is the volcano going off, right? That no one else believes is about to explode. And you've got to get your family out of there in time. I like my man versus nature because there is no bad guy. It's like sort of relaxing. The bad guy is hot lava, right? It's also not as dynamic as Valjean versus Javert, but it's interesting. Man versus the unknown. Sometimes this is called man versus the supernatural. This is your horror film where it's sort of something is out there that you don't understand and you've got to overcome it. And then my second favorite type of conflict, man versus self, right? All good stories generally have a man versus self element. Valjean has no weakness. He has no flaw. He is an unbelievably good person. And that's fun too, in a sort of fantasy way. But man, stories are better when your hero is also partly the antagonist. When they have so much self-doubt and so much uncertainty and so many sort of weaknesses that they're fantastically interesting. Arthur Miller's The Crucible. I don't know if you guys have read that great play. It's about a witch hunt, really sort of timely for our era right now. And he's saying basically the hero, John Proctor, has been accused of being a witch. He has had an affair with the young woman that works for him. And so he's in a tight spot because he's not guilty of what he's been accused of, but he is guilty of something else almost as heinous. I call this the Bill Clinton dilemma. Now, what do you do, right? How do you do it? Because you've got to deal with your own guilt, your own sort of questions about the value of your character at the same time as you're dealing with this external threat that's trying to kill you for some other reason that you're not actually guilty of. It's really an interesting conflict, the man versus self, person versus self, sorry. And it can be superimposed on any other conflict. So when you have the volcano erupting, the person can also be sort of overcoming their own doubts and their own uncertainties about themselves. All right. So once I pick my core conflict, then I've got my antagonist. And the antagonist is really, then I've got the final move. Oh, sorry. I've got my hero and his want, the thing he wants. I want to be a part of your world, right? I've got this sort of setting. What sort of thing is he facing? And then I'm going to create my antagonist to essentially put a powerful obstacle in the path of my hero achieving his want, right? So, in keeping with my Little Mermaid theme, what is the antagonist that stops Ariel from succeeding? Ursula. What does Ursula want? Yeah, Ursula's a pretty straightforward villain. She just wants her soul, and she's like, looks like a huge octopus or whatever. She's terrible. Ursula's a pretty simplified villain. We don't get sympathetic for her. She doesn't turn into Jaime Lannister where we're cheering for her at the end. We're probably not going to have a version of Wicked where Ursula is, made human through us understanding her own stuff. Does the musical try? Not surprising. Okay. Not surprising though, because they are tapping into the zeitgeist where we don't want to just make these villains and just categorize them as villains. We want to understand them a little bit better and care about them a little bit. So there's Ursula in our way. That's the structure though. Hero wants something. Setting is creating a lot of drama. Villain, antagonist, fits as the blocking point, standing literally between the hero and their goal, right? Ursula's this sort of Faustian character where she offers something that seems like she's actually facilitating success in that goal. But we all know what happens when you take that offer, right? You're in big trouble. So yeah, Ursula is still blocking the progress of our protagonist. So how do you do it, right? How do you do it? How do you create someone who represents something that you care about, but is also in the way of your hero's success? Well, I would go back again to the zeitgeist, and I would say the best villains generally have the power of the status quo behind them. Meaning, basically, the hero wants to make a change, and the villain wants to keep things as they are, right? So Valjean wanted food for his family. What did Javert want? He wanted the laws to stay the same. Joseph Campbell, in The Myth of the Hero, he looked at all stories across all time, and he said, the villain almost always is the figure of the status quo. He's the one that represents how things are, right? And the hero represents the person trying to make a change to fix a problem with how things are. Sure.
So I have a question regarding the role of redeeming the villain. Because most of the time when you see a redeemed villain, it's just because they're replacing them with a bigger, badder villain. So do you think that's the only way to redeem a villain is by replacing it with something else? Or does it feel cheap at the end if you're just like, oh no, they were good all along?
So that's capitalism. As long as you keep buying tickets, the villain will keep coming back. Mm-hmm. That's sort of a different thing. When I was a kid and I was watching Star Wars, obviously, again, I was born in 74, so this was a pivotal movie for me. At the end of it, Darth, this villain that you would hope would just get murdered and thrown off something, instead takes off his helmet and Luke hugs him. I'm like, why is my hero hugging the villain? Kill him, destroy the status quo. That's the Emperor with all his power. You got to stop him. Why was Luke hugging his father?
Yeah.
Well, that's because George Lucas wanted us to have a redeemable villain. Did it stop Star Wars? No, right? They just created another one and another one and another one.
And somehow Palpatine returned, yeah.
Yeah. And we'll just keep bringing them back with CGI if we have to. Now, I think that to answer your question, yes, if the villain represents the status quo, there's always going to be someone else within the status quo to step forward. Everyone has a manager, and that manager is going to be coming in to also reinforce. So you defeat one or you convert one to goodness, the next one's just waiting to challenge you. But the truth is that really is a capitalist thing. Like, you can tell if you don't care about the money, if you don't care about the book 2, you really can resolve it, find peace, and let your characters live happily ever after. Yeah.
Because do you think that it might be like they're not, if they are replaced or if they are redeemed, then they were never truly an antagonist, that they were maybe just like a rival or a different category of opposition?
Either one works. That's actually more dynamic and more interesting when that's true. Mm-hmm. But my Jamie Lannister example, when he throws that kid off the balcony, like, he's a bad guy.
Right.
By almost every metric. And so it's really only the exposure to the good guys, quote unquote, that sort of creates a different attitude inside him. But no, with Valjean, I hate to spoil a book, but man, guys, Les Mis and Rob's been out for a long time. You've had your chance to read it.
Yeah.
Valjean at the end, Javert, when he's saved by Valjean at the end, he can't make sense of it. He cannot come to terms with it. He kills himself in the same way that Huck leaves society, because he can't come to terms with the notion that his whole life has been wasted chasing someone who's actually a good person. And so, you've got a lot of ways you can go with it. You can change them, you can end them, you can replace them. It kind of just depends on your own spirit as a writer.
Thank you.
Sure. Does anyone else have any?
Are there any more questions on Zoom? Anybody want to unmute and ask your question? I see nobody wanting to unmute. Okay, anybody else in the room? Okay, well, we'll move on.
Let's see. Well, I'll say one more thing. Well, I'll say one more thing. This is just a metaphor, sort of, to leave you with, and then I do want questions, because let's face it, in our on-demand society, we're not built to just listen anymore, right? We've got to participate. So, or we just fade off. Who knows what you guys are thinking about right now? Bills. Yeah, exactly. So I got to incorporate you. But I will end with a metaphor. So when I was a kid, I was born in Indiana, and that's where my mom's family is from. And we'd go out there every Christmas to spend time with her family. And we were so bored, me and my sister, because we didn't have any of our modern conveniences, and the TV shows were crazy bad out there. For some reason, they seemed different. And we had this board game that we loved, that we played nonstop in the vacuum that created, and it was called Battling Tops. And basically, you would spin these tops. There was a bowl, and you would spin these tops, and they'd slide into the bowl, and then they'd start striking against each other, right? And through the magic of physics, their striking wouldn't slow down. It would speed up as the conflict between the tops sort of fed into the energy of each other. And the angle of the bowl sent them back again and again, careening into each other in really interesting ways. They made a whole industry out of this game called Beyblades, but at the time it was just battling tops. That's the way to think about plot, right? So your protagonist and your antagonist are those tops. and they're spinning. They're trying to stay on their own axes together. But because of the shape of the conflict, right, or the shape of their ideology, it's driving them into each other with more and more force until eventually one of them gets knocked out of the bowl. That's the metaphor for conflict. That's sort of how it all works in storytelling, at least in my experience, and certainly in the person versus person format. All right, ask me some questions about anything, including my background or anything like that.
Are we going to be using these handouts at all?
Oh, we don't. Do we have time?
We have 40 minutes.
Oh, we do.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
We have plenty of time.
Okay, got it. Let's do questions, and then we'll go to the handouts. I'm sorry, I thought we were ending at 11 for some reason.
No, 11:30.
Okay, gotcha.
Anybody have any questions so far regarding? I see someone on Zoom that looks like they might have a question up there. Now, were you just? Oh, there's Dennis. Go ahead, Dennis.
Hi, I got in a little bit late, but I'm wondering, did you deal with the antagonist maybe being either a storm or something like that, nature, or man versus some other aspect of storytelling? You want to share about that if you did?
Yeah. We talked about man versus nature, and actually that was kind of at the core of the talk in the sense that when I ran in for my own novels, when I ran into this notion that I didn't really want to vilify anyone in this zeitgeist of great open-mindedness, I chose insects as my villain. So my character is essentially, in my novel, his job is to travel through space, and essentially whenever a creature has jumped ecosystems into an ecosystem that can't support it, but the creature is powerful enough to destroy the ecosystem if it's not contained, then his team gets called in to essentially eliminate the threat, usually by relocation rather than murder, but sometimes when you need the extra drama and excitement, by murder. And so, yeah, the whole thing is sort of man versus nature, and I borrowed it conveniently because I didn't want to vilify. Other types of people other than myself. Yeah.
Okay, more questions. Okay, go ahead and go to the mic behind you.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is a question or a comment, but I've seen quite often that when you're writing that one person that's seen as a villain in one culture is going to be seen as a hero in another. One man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter.
Yeah.
And you've seen examples of that in recent years with in the Middle East. Yeah. But I'm writing a historical novel. I'm researching it right now and outlining it. And there's one particular character that is very compelling because in the American colonies, to the rebels, he was a terrible person. He was a terrorist. His name was Colonel Banastre Tarleton.
Yeah.
The Tarleton's Raiders, or Tarleton's Legion, and a cavalry officer. And he was hated because of all the rumors of the terrible things that he did or allowed his men to do.
Right.
And but in London, they loved him. They thought he was a hero. He was an exemplary cavalry officer serving the king, and he could do no wrong. Yeah. And I was thinking, what a contrast between his reputation here in the colonies and what his reputation was in England.
Of course, and the sort of movement of our culture hasn't even saved history. In fact, history is in a way more under siege by this sort of what I call narrative reevaluation, by this reevaluation of people's behaviors than anything else. Right? I was off for Indigenous People Day this year, and I was like, Indigenous People Day? I didn't think we had one of those. And then someone was like, oh, it's Christopher Columbus Day. I was like, oh, I get it. I see what happened. And we're sort of like narratively reevaluating these historical figures to decide if they're heroes or villains.
I was just wondering whether in your writing you've ever encountered that and how you deal with it. How an antagonist, in Star Wars, I'm sure that within the people who strongly support the Emperor and the Empire.
Right.
Darth Vader's their hero. He's the ultimate paradigm of a good hero serving the Emperor. But
there's a great scene in the movie Clerks where the guy says, when Luke blows up the Death Star, he goes, "What about all those people that were there working to like keep the toilets running?" He goes, he killed them all. And you're thinking, oh wait, maybe Luke's the villain. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely everything you're saying is true. The problem is in navigating that, it back to the F. Scott Fitzgerald quote, how do you keep two ideas in your head at the same time and yet still function? We still have to have like a want, and that want has to be noble generally for our reader to care and to want along with the reader. Probably the best way to differentiate who's the hero and who's the villain, at least according to Joseph Campbell's standard, is to consider who has the status quo, who has the power. So this guy that's got all of these people in England with all of their power and their wealth and their influence on his side, he might be the villain, because he's got the wealth and the power to be corrupted by it. He's not the only villain. He's also the good guy to a lot of people. But the status quo can help you sort of filter that out a little bit sometimes. But no, there's no easy answer.
Good morning. I was interested in what you said about The Little Mermaid.
Sure.
And one of the reasons why I find the whole storyline and especially Ursula a compelling antagonist is because she doesn't just say it's your soul or nothing, right?
Right.
She first takes her voice.
Right.
Right. And so I wondered if you had any suggestions for us as writers as to how to, phase these sort of incremental requests or incremental villainy into the antagonist.
I would say just look at yourself, like look at your own worst qualities and try and figure out how you got there. Exactly. Yeah, truly, because that is how that works. That is how you sort of move from good to bad, is in tiny increments. And if I could use my own weight as an example of this, I've been trying to lose weight forever. And I'm like, you know who the villain is? It's cheeseburgers. I'm going to stop eating cheeseburgers. And then I'm like, yeah, exactly. Exactly. Literally self. Like I'm creating a second self by eating so much. So I know that cheeseburger is the villain, but then suddenly I've got to stop. I love these Arizona iced teas, and I've got to stop them because they're so full of sugar, and sugar keeps your blood sugar pinned, and you want more, and you drink more, and then you want more, and it's this Turkish delight, to borrow from Narnia, and you're just sort of slowly moving to this point where you finally get on the scale, and you're like, crap, what happened? That's the pattern that happens not just across food, but across morals, across, relationships, across all these standards. It happens in dinks and dunks, tiny drabs, little pieces at a time. Man, I lost my mind when somebody asked me to see my driver's license at Rite Aid. They asked to see my driver's license because I was buying cold medicine for my daughter. Now, I understand why they wanted it. They thought I was cooking meth, and I was buying like all this medicine that could be used to cook meth. So they wanted to borrow my driver's license to make sure to track me and make sure I wasn't buying too much of it. But I was born in 1974. I grew up in the land of the free, and I was thinking. I said to the woman, I go, I'm not driving the medicine home. And I was saying to her, essentially, we shouldn't have papers to allow us to do things. We should be allowed to do things. Because in my opinion, in my youth, in my upbringing, freedom mattered more than safety, right? But I saw that freedom slowly disappear a little bit at a time. I saw you no longer be able to sign up for a hotel under any name you wanted, right? I saw you have to use your credit card, and you have to establish who you are, and you have to do a background check. And now when I apply for a job, people are rooting around in my history and trying to figure out who I am and all this stuff. And that freedom and that privacy, it matters to me more than maybe others. And so I've been keen to watch it disappear. I've noticed it disappear. And it didn't disappear overnight. It disappeared in tiny little steps, checking your driver's license for the cough medicine you're buying, until it was normalized, and then it was just there, just like my few extra pounds. So yeah, it happens in tiny steps. Now, in a novel, we don't have time necessarily to do that, and so figures like Ursula are gonna develop things in a more sort of silly and straightforward manner. But the power is still there because we recognize it in our own lives. We recognize it over the course of decades in our own lives, even if it's only happening in 10 minutes in the film. Yeah, it taps into that energy. Yeah. Other questions? It's so much better when you guys ask questions.
There's got to be. I'm actually going to put one of our members on the spot. Brenda, you've got a very unique antagonist in your novel. Why don't you get up there and ask him some questions on how to deal with that one?
Actually, it's not one, it's two.
Okay.
I have a human and a non-human entity that. So the non-human, he doesn't really have an arc.
Okay.
The human eventually has an arc. It doesn't happen till the second book.
Okay.
So I don't know if you should do that, if they should all be combined, because it's, he doesn't have an arc in the first book.
Yeah, it's up to you. Like, some of us love the comfort of no arcs, right? I mean, I've been reading Batman for 30 years because I know he's not going to change, and I know he's going to still fight righteously against villainy. And it's comfort food. Feels good. Like, oh yeah, Batman, you got it. Keep doing your thing. And while my life is full of inconsistencies and uncertainties and compromises, Batman doesn't have to deal with any of that stuff, right?
Right.
And so there is sort of there is a great comfort in static characters. Now, that being said, it's hard to track progress without change. And so if your progress is just Jack Reacher running around beating up people, then it works and you're going to sell millions of copies, but it's not going to be that artistically viable without the characters growing at least a little bit. And so, yeah, I don't know. My answer would be, I'd have to hear more details, but my answer would be probably try and get that arc in there, even if it's something tiny, even if it's, there's a movie I love called About Schmidt where Jack Nicholson's character is growing older and society's phasing him out. It's another man versus society. He's getting replaced at his job, all these things. All he's doing that's good is he's sending money to a kid in Africa that's starving. One of those, like sponsor a kid things. Mm-hmm. That's the only good thing he's doing throughout the entire movie. And at the end, the kid writes him a letter and says, "Thank you, you saved my life." And he just starts crying. Mm-hmm. And it's like, that was all it took for us to really care and to feel hopeful that he is getting better, that he is improving, that he is going to overcome his situation, because he's in a tough spot. He's facing against society. So he needs to be a good person for us to care and cheer for him. That is all it took, was him just sending those checks for $1 a month or whatever. And then at the end, he's got some redeeming qualities. So yeah, work it in a little bit, even if it's little tiny steps.
Thanks.
Yeah. Anybody else, or you want to do some more F. Scott Fitzgerald?
I'll ask a question.
Okay.
Because in your Intergalactic Exterminators,
yeah,
obviously the rotating plethora of pests that need to be handled is throughout the book.
Yeah.
But you also have an antagonistic other extermination corporation.
Yeah.
So what do you call that if not an antagonist? Is that something else in your book?
It is. No, it is. But really what it is capitalism. So the story in my book is there's a group that's using robots essentially to hunt for insects, to take over the jobs of the lower class blue collar workers that are doing their doing the work as humans, or not just humans, but all sorts of different biologic creatures. And so I wanted them to be facing not just nature, but also society, because society is changing. Technology is changing. It's causing all of this disruption, and it's creating this robotic workforce, and it's taking their jobs. Was I trying to tap into the zeitgeist? Of course. I'm going to Vons once a week, and I'm using the machine to check out, right? I recognize that the robotic workforce is taking over. Heck, I got a robot that vacuums for me, right? And it's really nice. So yeah, I was working that in, but there's something else too to having that physical enemy, and that's the climax. If you think about how am I going to build a climax to a story, remember those tops are beating against each other until one knocks the other out, right? That's the climactic moment. How am I going to build in a climax if my enemy is just a bunch of insects? Well, I needed a human, I say human, but he's really an alien. I needed an alien presence to defeat at the end for ultimate satisfaction. And so there is a villain, but he comes in probably in the second act, and he's not that important compared to the insects. So I was walking a careful line between sort of borrowing him for the climax and also not caring about him maybe as much as you'd think someone giving this talk would. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm looking for your opinion.
Sure.
I wrote a book for all men and for all women. My book has no characters in it.
Okay.
Okay. Which is kind of different. And what it's a rule book, rules that need to be followed in society.
Okay.
And it's written for moms that have single boys, women, okay, and a specific. The title of the book, and I'm looking to get it published right now. I'm completely done with it. It's going to be about 230 pages when it's done.
Nice.
The title of the book is The Official Male Bathroom Rule Book. The rules that men use when we go to the bathroom. Okay? Now, we, Ben, have been going to the bathroom using all of these rules.
I'm worried about your antagonist here. Go ahead.
And women go to the bathroom, it's a completely different experience. Okay?
Sure.
For women going to the bathroom, it's a social event. They talk over stalls. Okay, they go in front of the mirror. They do the makeup. They talk about the boyfriends and husbands and all this stuff. Where guys, in my book, it describes it. We go in, do our duty, and get out.
Well, yeah, in a public bathroom. In a private bathroom, we stay for a long time.
That's right. Okay. Well, there's even a section in my book for ladies only. And it's how to get your man, your husband, to put the toilet seat down, okay, which is a big complaint. It's educational, it's humorous, It's informative, and it's for moms that have single boys that don't have a man around.
Sure.
Okay, I was just talking to my cousin yesterday, and we were talking
so
about
can we limit this to questions instead of...
Okay,
Thank you.
Do you have any suggestions?
Well, I think you, in describing it, you showed us who the characters were. They're just us, right? I mean, so there was a movement in 1945 called postmodernism, and essentially it was the bringing in of the reader as a character. And so the reader becomes part of the story. And you can't tell the story without the reader being there and without the reader having some understanding. I don't know if you guys ever saw we're on a Star Wars theme, so the great movie Spaceballs. But there's a moment when the two characters are having a lightsaber battle, and they kill the cameraman who's trying to film the movie. And the one guy goes, oops, that wasn't me, that was him. And it's only funny because we're watching, right? The story in itself doesn't mean anything, but since the story knows there's a viewer out there, and it knows that viewer knows that there's a cameraman, and it knows that viewer has seen Star Wars, and it's sort of playing off the viewer as the third major character, protagonist, antagonist, reader, viewer. They become the story. And so, I don't know, I would even think about writing that in second person. You do this, you do that, you raise the toilet seat, because your character really is the reader, and you're tapping into all of their history and all of their sort of passion and energy in structuring it that way. No, that sounds really cool.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, last questions because we want to get to the Gatsby. Anybody out there have a question? Okay, it's all yours.
All right, so I just wanted to play a game called Find the Antagonist. And I don't know how many of you guys have read The Great Gatsby. I hope all of you have. It's incredibly beautiful. And like all good books, it taps into qualities that aren't just of the cultural zeitgeist, right? When we talk about Gatsby, we talk about, it represents the Roaring 20s, et cetera, et cetera. Of course it does. That's why it was so popular in the 20s. But for it to make it to the 2020s, holy cow, it's been 100 years. It has to have human elements that are going to stay popular no matter what's happening in society, right? And some of those human elements are things like love and betrayal and wealth. So this is a very beautiful book. We're going to meet 4 characters as I read through this. And I want you guys to try and find the antagonist. All right? And when I'm done, I want you to tell me why you think they're the antagonist. I want you to justify your decision. All right? Let's read a little bit here. This is the middle of chapter 1. Her husband, among various physical accomplishments, had been one of the most powerful Inns that ever played football at New Haven. A national figure in a way, one of those men who reached such an acute limited excellence at 21 that everything afterwards savors of anticlimax. His family were enormously wealthy, and even in college his freedom with money was a matter of reproach. But now he'd left Chicago and come east in a fashion that rather took your breath away. For instance, he brought down a string of polo ponies from Lake Forest. It was hard to realize that a man in my own generation was wealthy enough to do that. Why they came east, I don't know. They had spent a year in France for no particular reason, then drifted here and there unrestfully wherever people played polo and were rich together. This was a permanent move, said Daisy over the phone, but I didn't believe it. I had no sight into Daisy's heart, but I felt that Tom would drift on forever, seeking, a little wistfully, for the dramatic turbulence of some irrecoverable football game. And so it happened that on a warm, windy evening I drove over to East Egg to see my 2 friends whom I scarcely knew at all. Their house was even more elaborate than I expected, a cheerful red and white Georgian colonial mansion overlooking the bay. The lawn started at the beach and ran toward the front door for a quarter of a mile, jumping over sundials and brick walls and burning gardens. Finally, when it reached the house, drifting up the side in bright vines as though from the momentum of its run, the front was broken by a line of French windows glowing now with reflected gold and wide open to the warm, windy afternoon, and Tom Buchanan, in riding clothes, was standing with his legs apart on the front porch. All right, talk about filmmaker, right? This feels so much like a film to me. It feels like we're taking the camera and we're running along this enormous driveway, this enormous front lawn, and the camera is zooming up to Tom, and there he is standing in his riding clothes with his legs apart, right? And we already have some details about Tom. He's restless. He's bored. He played football. He was a great football player. And now he's got all this wealth and he's got nothing to stop him, right? No conflict, no antagonist to overcome. When we have no antagonist to overcome, what are we usually? The antagonist. Yeah. Let's keep going. Let's see what Tom looks like here. He had changed since his New Haven years. Now he was a sturdy, straw-haired man of 30 with a rather hard mouth and a supercilious manner. 2 shining, arrogant eyes had established dominance over his face and gave him the appearance of always leaning aggressively forward. Not even the effeminate swank of his riding clothes could hide the enormous power of that body. He seemed to fill those glistening boots until he strained at the top lacing, and you could see a great pack of muscle shifting when his shoulder moved under his thin coat. It was a body capable of enormous leverage, a cruel body. His speaking voice, a gruff, husky tenor, added to the impression of fractiousness he conveyed. There was a touch of paternal contempt in it, even toward people he liked, and there were men at New Haven who hated his guts. All right. We're playing Find the Antagonist, but I'm gonna spoil a little bit of it. Tom's one of them. How do we know? How do we know? What's been established here? Anybody, help me out. Arrogance, very good. Did you? Yeah. Body capable of enormous leverage. Yeah. A cruel body. Yeah. And he's got all those muscles, right? And what's that mean? That means that we're in trouble physically, right? If we need to stop Tom, we've got to stop him with our words because he's too strong to stop with our bodies, right? But there's something about the eyes too that are a little disturbing, right? You guys know that you can tell the difference between a predator and prey, right, by where the eyes are. On a horse, which is a prey animal, which is a surprise because they're kind of terrifying, where are the eyes? on the sides, right? And that's so it can move around to see what's hunting it, right? Now on an alligator, which is a prey animal, where are the eyes? The front, right? And there's something innate about us. We know this. When you run into something and it has its eyes staring forward at you, like a human, spoiler alert, what is our reaction to it? It's fear, right? Not necessarily fear, but yeah, a little bit of caution at least, right? Yeah, if I'm running into a deer, my reaction's different than if I'm running into a grizzly bear. And that is partially because of where their eyes are. The deer is looking this way and this way to make sure something's not hunting it. The bear is looking straight forward to eat you, right? It is going to keep coming in that direction to eat you and not look back and not worry about something else eating it. It's the predator. So, Tom, holy cow, what are his eyes doing? Yeah, they're leading the rest of his body forward to consume, to destroy, right? And he's got this cruel body capable of great leverage to make it possible. Great antagonist so far, right? We're not done. Now, I don't think my opinion on these matters is final, he seemed to say, just because I'm stronger and more of a man than you are. We were in the same senior society, and while we were never intimate, I always had the impression that he approved of me and wanted me to like him in some harsh, defiant wistfulness of his own. We talked for a few minutes on the sunny porch. I've got a nice place here, he said, his eyes flashing about restlessly. That's a fun detail, right? Normally the visitor would be like, you've got a nice place. Nope, Tom's going to just point it out to you. Turning me around by one arm, he moved a broad, flat hand along the front vista, including in its sweep a sunken Italian garden, a half acre of deep pungent roses, and a snub-nosed motorboat that bumped the tide offshore. Ooh, status quo. What are you seeing in Tom's wealth? All right? His body isn't the only thing capable of great power. What else does he have that's capable of great power? His money. He's got a lot of money. When you see that boat bumping against the dock, you know you're among wealth. And where there's wealth, there's usually status quo, right? I want to keep the world the same way that it created my good fortune. It belonged to Domain, the oil man. He turned me around again politely and abruptly. We'll go inside. We walked through a high hallway into a bright rosy-colored space, fragilely bound into the house by French windows at either side. The windows were ajar and gleaming white against the fresh grass outside that seemed to grow a little way into the house. A breeze blew through the room, blew curtains in at one end and out the other like pale flags, twisting them up toward the frosted wedding cake of the ceiling, and then rippled over the wine-colored rug, making a shadow of it as wind does on the sea. The only completely stationary object in the room was an enormous couch on which two women were buoyed up as though upon an anchored balloon. They were both in white, and their dresses were rippling and fluttering as if they had just been blown back in after a short flight around the house. I must have stood for a few moments listening to the whip and snap of the curtains and the groan of a picture on the wall. Then there was a boom as Tom Buchanan shut the rear windows and the caught wind died out about the room, and the curtains and the rugs and the two women ballooned slowly to the floor. Holy cow, this is beautiful writing. First of all, not only is the writing really beautiful, but every sentence is serving a purpose to create the antagonist, right? Now, this is a nice room. Did you notice how beautiful it is? And how there are qualities to it that nobody hates? Like nobody, I don't think, would hate sitting in this beautiful, clean room with the wind blowing off the sea and sort of raising up the curtains and that beautiful sound of the curtains bouncing against the wall, right? And how everything is sort of light and fresh and wonderful. I want to be a part of this. And that's actually part of the creation of the antagonist. Because Tom has such a nice world that it's really seductive. I want to be a part of it. What's the problem with being part of Tom's world? You will be subservient. He's in charge of it. He's dominant in his morals. I don't know. I don't think I like him. I don't know yet, but I'm getting a sense, right? Yeah. The ultimate, like, this could be a hero in a different story, right? But because he's sort of tall and handsome and masculine, this could be Jack Reacher. But if we're not in line with his politics or in line with his needs or wants, he's the villain. Yeah, for sure. And yeah, here he's definitely the villain. But there's something about his world that's appealing, and that makes him doubly powerful. If you want to be there, he has even more dominion over you. Right? Let's read a little bit more. The younger of the two was a stranger to me. She was extended full length at the end of the divan, completely motionless, and with her chin raised a little, as if she were balancing something on it, which was quite likely to fall. If she saw me out of the corner of her eye, she gave no hint of it. Indeed, I was almost surprised into murmuring an apology for having disturbed her by coming in. The other girl, Daisy, made an attempt to rise. She leaned slightly forward with a expression that she having trouble reading. Then she laughed, an absurd, charming little laugh, and I laughed too and came forward into the room. I am paralyzed with happiness. She laughed again as if she said something very witty and held my hand for a moment, looking up into my face, promising that there was no one in the world she so much wanted to see. That was a way she had. She hinted in a murmur that the surname of the balancing girl was Baker. I've heard it said that Daisy's murmur was only to make people lean toward her, an irrelevant criticism that made it no less charming. At any rate, Miss Baker's lips fluttered. She nodded at me almost imperceptibly, then quickly tipped her head back again. The object she was balancing had obviously tottered a little bit and given her something of a fright. Again, a sort of apology rose to my lips, almost an exhibition of complete self-sufficiency. Almost any exhibition of complete self-sufficiency draws a stunned tribute to me. Let's talk about Daisy and Miss Baker a little bit. So, are they the good guys or the bad guys? We don't know yet. We've only seen them sort of floating in the middle of that room in this really sort of appealing setting. What clues do we have about Daisy's character so far? She likes attention. Why do you say that? Because she always talks quietly, so people lean in closer. Good. It's probably not even just attention. It's probably also like a different type of power, isn't it? Because while Tom's power is physical and dominating, Daisy's power probably isn't any less significant. It's just a different kind. It's seductive, right? She'll get you coming a little bit closer and a little bit closer. And she'll make you think you're the only person in the world, right? That sounds pretty good. I don't hate Daisy yet. Let's go a little bit further. Let's go down past all the dialogue. So jump all the way to we're going down about an entire page to let's see. Shoot, I had it a second ago. Oh, here we go. Before I could reply, there's a line that says, Gatsby demanded Daisy. What Gatsby? Right? They're introducing Gatsby, the character, but I want to get a little ahead of that part. Is everybody before I could reply that he was my neighbor? All right. Before I could reply that he was my neighbor, dinner was announced. Wedging his tense arm imperatively under mine, Tom Buchanan compelled me from the room as though he were moving a checker to another square. Great detail. Slenderly, languidly, their hands set lightly on their hips, the two young women preceded us out onto a rosy-colored porch open towards sunset, where 4 candles flickered on the table in the diminished wind. Why candles? Objected Daisy, frowning. She snapped them out with her fingers. In 2 weeks, it'll be the longest day of the year. She looked at us all radiantly. Do you always watch for the longest day of the year and then miss it? I always watch for the longest day of the year and then miss it. We ought to plan something, yawned Miss Baker, sitting down at the table as though she were getting into bed. All right, said Daisy. What do we plan? She turned to me helplessly. What do people plan? Before I could answer, her eyes fastened with an odd expression on her little finger. Look, she complained. I heard it. We all looked. The knuckle was black and blue. You did it, Tom, she said accusingly. I know you didn't mean to, but you did do it. That's what I get for marrying a brute of a man, a great, big, hulking physical specimen of a... I hate the word hulking, Tom objected crossly, even in kidding. Hulking, insisted Daisy. Sometimes she and Miss Baker talked at once, unobtrusively, and with a bantering inconsequence that was never quite chatter, that was as cool as their white dresses and their impersonal eyes in the absence of all desire. They were here, and they accepted Tom and me, making only a polite effort to entertain or be entertained. They knew that presently dinner would be over, and a little later the evening too would be over and casually put away. It was sharply different from the West, where an evening was hurried from phase to phase toward its close, in a continually disappointed anticipation, or else in sheer nervous dread of the moment itself. All right, that's a really important paragraph in our Spot the Antagonists. Let's go a couple more, because Tom's about to really reveal his lack of of sympathy. Let's go a couple more. You make me feel uncivilized, Daisy, I confessed on my second glass of corky but rather impressive, claret? Can't you talk about crops or something? I meant nothing in particular by this remark, but it was taken up in an unexpected way. Civilization's going to pieces, broke out Tom violently. I've gotten to be a terrible pessimist about things. Have you read The Rise of the Colored Empires by this man Godard? Why, no, I answered, rather surprised by his tone. Well, it's a fine book, and everybody ought to read it. The idea is, if we don't look out for the white race, or if we don't look out, the white race will be utterly submerged. It's all scientific stuff. It's been proven. Tom is very profound, said Daisy, with an expression of unthoughtful sadness. He reads deep books with long words in them. What was the word Well, these books are all scientific, insisted Tom, glancing around at her impatiently. This fellow who worked out the whole thing, it's up to us. We are the dominant race to watch out, or these other races will have control of things. We've got to beat them down, whispered Daisy, winking ferociously toward the fervent sun. Okay. Well, we can finish our game of Spot the Antagonist as it regards to Tom. What did he just reveal to us? Yeah, he's racist. And remember, this is the 1920s, so this notion of sort of eugenics and Hitler, that's going to come to its head, isn't it? And we're going to find one of the biggest villains in the history of mankind is just around the corner with these same ideas. So if F. Scott Fitzgerald is like on top of things, he's predicting Hitler just a little early, right? Tom, bad guy. But let's talk about Jordan Baker and Daisy Buchanan for a second. What are your guys' impressions of them? What are you picking up from this experience? Why do you say that?
Oh, she's completely taking control by pushing things in the direction she wants.
Well, but Tom's the one leading him around like a chess piece. Do you think Daisy's more powerful of the two? Yeah, that's not a bad guess. Maybe you've read it. It's not a bad guess. If you haven't, you're picking up on exactly what F. Scott Fitzgerald is putting down. He's trying to show us there are actually antagonists all around. And they're in this world that's so inviting that we want to be a part of it. But man, if we get close, they are going to corrupt the crap out of us. And pretty soon we're going to become like them. And when you read that moment where the girls are just kind of like listlessly, Jordan sits down at the table like she's sinking into bed. They have so little conflict, so little to worry about, as opposed to everyone else in the world, that they're just kind of they're barely there. They're barely anchored to the earth. They're almost floating away. Now we do see some strife, right? What happens when Daisy says, or when Tom says, "I hate the word hulking"? Daisy restates it. That's right. I am not in danger. You do not threaten me, she's saying basically. And she does have some physical damage. Her fingers hurt. Tom did it. Maybe he got a little rough. Maybe we're seeing some signs of domestic violence. But Daisy is not weak. She is not needing to be rescued from Tom. In fact, I'm picking up from just these details that I don't know if Tom needs to be rescued from Daisy or not, but I do know that everyone else needs to be rescued from Tom and Daisy. These are great antagonists. You want to know what the masterstroke of this story is? I'll tell you, and it feeds into everything we've been saying. This is why F. Scott Fitzgerald is so dang good. Nick is the third villain in this triumvirate. Jordan Baker falls in love with him, and he doesn't notice. Jordan Baker is the third character. He doesn't notice. He's too preoccupied with his neighbor Gatsby. And at the end of it, Jordan says, "You broke my heart. You ruined me." And he's like, "I did? Sorry about that." And then he moves on. And what Fitzgerald's doing with that tiny detail, it's like the About Schmidt detail. He's saying basically, even the person you've been cheering for is not the only, is not perfect. He's not pure. He's a villain in someone else's story. And if we were to do the wicked thing and make Jordan in charge, Nick would be, in fact, the villain. And that sort of complexity, it's delicious, right? Because it mimics real life. The people you run into that you hate, they're not bad people. They have mommies and daddies too, right? They just have ideological differences than you, and they are the obstacles standing in the way between you and getting what you want. Sounds kind of selfish when you put it that way. All right? Thanks, guys. I really appreciate all your time that you gave me.
Boy, that was very informative. Very, very deep. Thank you, Ash, for coming out. He didn't get a chance to, but I'll hold these up. His books, you see some in the front. And so go online. You can get them anywhere that books are sold, pretty much. And you have a website. What's your website? ash-bishop.com. Pretty easy to find if you want to hunt him down later. So, boy, we don't have any time for any more questions, but those going to lunch will be able to bombard him if you wish. He's going to be our guest for lunch today. Next month will be our celebration of poetry. Lynette, can you say a few words about that?
Yeah, we're really excited about doing poetry in April to coincide with National Poetry Month. And right now we're going to do the same thing we have in the past. We are going to limit it to 2 poems per poet. It is readings by our members. And so if you're not a member, there's another great reason to join. Go ahead and send the poems in to me so I can see the length of them and make sure that that we can fit everybody in. And if we could get everything in by about the 14th, so we'll be ready for our reading that following Saturday, that would be great. Remember the 3 Ps: no politics, no pornography, no proselytizing. Now, proselytizing doesn't mean you can't talk about your spiritual journey. Just means you're not going to convince somebody to join whatever you're believing in. But I'm really excited. We always have a great time with our poetry meeting, and I'm looking forward to talking to all of you. So join us next month for poetry.
Thanks, Lynette. She's been leading that for several years. A couple last-minute reminders. We need volunteers, and if you haven't joined, please pay your dues. See you all in April for National Poetry Month. Have a good rest of the day.